back to our next activity in the Earth System poster series. So in this activity, what we're going to have you do as an individual or with your group, with your students, kids, is take a specific month, and if you're working with a set of people and divided them into groups, you can give each group a month, or if it's just yourself, grab a single month. In this case, I'll grab one right in the middle of the summer, Northern Hemisphere, and what I'm going to have you do is compare across during a given month each of the different data types. So when you take a closer look, you're going to start looking for data types that are directly related to one another, directly proportional, or ones that are inversely proportional. We want you to scan the whole of the map and look for areas that have extremes, and then what that looks like across different data types. This will be one of the questions we'll have you answer for us when you're doing our assignments, page entries. What goes on across an area, let's say like the Arctic? Look at insolation, how much solar radiation is actually getting into the Arctic during the summer. Go across and look at cloud cover. Are clouds blocking certain areas and not allowing sun's radiation through, or areas open? And start to make observations like this across the whole system. Then what I'm going to have you do is look a little bit closer at a given area. So put your map side by side and zoom in on a specific point and start looking at that spot and see what kind of things you can bring forward for trends, for patterns, and try and pick a different part of the world than you've been looking at in the prior assignments. It's pretty easy to stick with an area where you've lived before or know quite a bit about the weather anyway. What I'll do for this one is I'll put us right in the center of the map, and we can start talking about what's going on here. And you don't have to be bound to a continent or an ocean either. You can also look at the interplay between the two. In this case, I'll do that. We'll say the very west coast of desert Africa, and then the ocean just offshore of that, and as it crosses the middle belt of the Atlantic here. This happens to be an area where I've sailed quite a bit on ships and have watched the summer weather patterns. So I'll be able to kick in some neat observations that I've seen personally out there on the water. The first map here, aerosols. So this is an area that actually is showing very high aerosols at this time of year. And aerosols, as you guys remember, particulate matter, whether it's solid particles or liquid particles that are just up in the air. So this particular satellite type can read that. So there's a lot of aerosols. Pairing it up with this biosphere map, what do we see in this area? Not much green. So there's not a whole lot of primary production, not a whole lot of life here. We move on to the next map. Cloud fraction cover in the summer, almost none on land, a little bit here offshore. Precipitation associated with the cloud cover, you can see that pairs really well. Almost no precipitation there, very much a desert. And as we move on, here's our insolation. So right in that area, sunlight is penetrating, solar radiation is being absorbed by the Earth there. There isn't much in the way to blanket. There's not clouds in the way, so we see a lot of insolation going on, a lot of solar radiation hitting that Western African desert, and surface temperature shows it. So that's our warmest temperature right there in the midsummer. Going back to that first pair of slides we had, I can start to knit it together for you in kind of just a neat localized story. And this is something we want you to try and do. So when you pick your area on your map and you start looking at patterns as I just did, and you start coming up with conclusions, experiment a little. If you want to look around at different websites that you like for weather, this is a neat chance to do that. If you want to look at some cultural websites which show, or maybe what crops are going on, what does life look like right there, what are the colors right there. In this case, this is actually pretty important. Western Saharan Africa, the desert sands are very red. So whatever parent rock it was that weathered down and became those desert sands, they were high in iron. And when that iron is oxidizing, it rusts, it turns rust red. And that's what you see there. So if you look at cultural photos from Senegal or Mali, you're going to see that. The other thing that's unique here locally, and we could see it as we were going through our maps, is during the summer, it's largely an east wind. It's going in the direction my finger's going. The center of the low pressures are below there, and we see this when we're working on the water on ships, is you're generally going to have this offshore wind. It's coming from land. Because these particles are so dry, there's almost no precipitation there as we were seeing, the fine parts of them can get lifted by this east wind and they can get sent across the ocean here. And in fact, the aerosols map shows it perfectly. They're reaching all the way out to the Caribbean. This iron, when it lands on the ocean surface, is fantastic food for all of the primary production in ocean. In fact, plankton love it. They go crazy and they bloom like mad, and then all the food chain above it benefit because suddenly there's all this salad to eat. You can eat all these little guys, and fish eat those, and then bigger fish and squid and birds and everything that's supported by that. The biosphere map shows it here. So you see all this nice life going on right here in the ocean that's focused around the Caribbean area. A neat example I have from sailing around the Caribbean is with an oceanographic company. We were towing nets and we're pulling up plankton, we're pulling up dinoflagellates, all these cool little animals, and we're putting them under microscopes. When we're dragging these nets through the water, on more than one occasion, we've actually gotten locusts from West Africa. So the winds are so steady and so strong transporting that fine sand from Africa. It actually can also carry insect bodies all the way across an ocean basin, and we've picked those up before. So just a neat personal example of what can go on. That's the kind of stuff we want to hear. So when you're posting in your assignment section, this is your chance to start reaching out to community. Community is a great way to get a different type of data collected, to hear stories and involve them. And this is a big part of our project as a whole. It's not just one type of data, but comparing across a whole bunch of different types of data. So we look forward to hearing what you post.